What's up, everybody? You are watching the Bar Bites podcast, the podcast for law students looking to life hack their legal careers and learn from the best and brightest in their fields to find out how they got to where they are today. I'm your host, Michael Goldfaden, co-founder of the newly formed law firm of Goldfaden Benson, a plaintiff's personal injury firm here in San Diego, California. Our guest today is Dan Fulkerson. Dan is the co-founder of Batta Fulkerson, a personal injury firm here in San Diego, California that has become an absolute behemoth over the last couple of years. Dan's here today to talk to us a little bit about his career path and how he was able to form such a successful law firm in such a short period of time. Without further ado, let's give a warm Bar Bites welcome to our guest today, Dan Fulkerson. Dan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I want to address the elephant in the room, or the dog in the room, for a second. Can you introduce us to the special guest that you brought in here today?
So anyone who knows me knows Teddy. Teddy comes pretty much everywhere that I go. He is a French bulldog that came into my life in 2020. Teddy was ditched on a doorstep and basically abandoned in very bad shape, pretty abused. And I rescue English and French bulldogs. So Teddy came to me through rescuing, and immediately I knew that he was a dog that wasn't going to leave my pack and my side, and he's been with me since. And we're attached to each other. He flies with me. He was in a wedding in New York City 2 years ago. He's gone to Miami a few times. Teddy is now living his best life. And
that's awesome.
That's what it's all about for me.
That's really cool. I know that the bulldog is obviously a big symbol for you and for your firm. Was that something that had always been true of you? Did you always love bulldogs, or is this something that has kind of formed as passion as an adult later in life?
So I got my first bulldog when I was 21 years old. San Diego State kid, partying too much, doing the normal undergrad thing. And one night after partying too much, I ordered a bulldog drunk in my bed. And 3 days later, this dog shows up, and Stella was my first English bulldog. She passed away a couple years ago at 17, which for an English is crazy. But she changed my life. You go from being a child, young adult with no responsibilities for the first time in your life. You're able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And I was out all the time, not coming home, not taking school seriously, just having a great time. And that dog gave me responsibility, and I had to show up at the house every night, and I had to take care of her, and it shifted my life. And so that was why the bulldogs have become, such a big part of my life, of our firm. When Paul and I opened Batta Fulkerson, we were doing the normal, sending each other scales of justice and shields and, weird shit like that back and forth. And that's the normal law firm stuff. And it's 11:30 at night. I sent him a bulldog, and I was like, can we do the bulldog as the logo? And the one of the many reasons I love my law partner is he just kind of goes with my crazy. And he was like, of course, let's go. And so it's been the mascot since.
I love that. And I know that the bulldog is kind of this symbol of, we're going to fight for you and fight for justice and everything like that. But I love that there is a story behind it. I also love that it's not just a scales of justice or some podium that everyone has. I've actually tried to copy you guys and emulate it a little bit in my own practice. And a buffalo has a separate symbol to me in my life. But I just love the way that you guys have owned it and taken it on. There's so much to unpack there. I want to talk about your partner and how you chose this partner and how you guys are so successful. I think a lot of our audience members here today are tuning in because they're probably faced with a similar situation, right?
Yeah.
Where they don't know, should they go out on their own? Is it better to form a partnership?
Yep.
How did you decide that Paul Batta was the partner for you, and how did that form?
Life kind of pushed it in that direction. I met Paul in law school. So he's been one of my best friends since we started law school. We're in the same section together and hung out all through law school. One of the nicest humans that I have ever met, to the point where when I first met him, I kind of thought it was fake nice. I'm like, no one can really be this sincerely nice, but he is just that person. He thinks about everyone else before he thinks about himself. He is a genuinely, sincerely good human being. And so Paul and I were really good friends. He got me, or got me an in for my first job after law school in a personal injury firm. And so we worked together and we got close and bonded through that experience. We were working obscene hours. I mean, like, when I say it, I legitimately mean it. 70-hour weeks, most weeks, sometimes 80-hour weeks, 7 days a week. And him and I were just grinding. And life in situations kind of forced me out of that situation. And Paul came with. And so we immediately were like, well, let's build something together. And so we came together, formed a partnership, and started rolling and just kind of went from there.
Yeah, when you describe, I've never met Paul. When
Yeah.
you describe him the way you do, it just kind of echoes what I've heard from our community, right? I've
Yeah.
tried to have a lot of the successful attorneys on this podcast. I've tried to get some various different fields on the podcast,
Yeah.
not just personal injury. It just happens to be that this is my field,
For
and
sure.
these are the people that I know, and
Yeah.
everyone that I meet, they say the same things about you guys.
Yeah.
Everyone says that both of you guys are very genuine, that they're the nicest guys you've ever met, and it probably speaks to the success that you've had as a law firm, that people view you this way.
Yeah.
Robert Hamparin, we were just talking
Yeah.
on the way up here, has the best things to say about
Yeah.
you. I actually went to get home insurance last week from a lady. She asked me what I did for a living. I told her. She goes, "Oh, do you know Paul Batta and Dan Fulkerson? I insure them too." They're like, she's like,
Yeah.
they're the nicest guys.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most important quality that Paul possesses, or that a partner possesses, that is really vital to the success of a partnership?
I think in our industry, there's a lot of ego. I don't think it serves people well. I think that if you can figure out how to kill your ego and humble yourself, I think that will go a very long way in being a lawyer and in our industry, because there's just so much bravado and so much, I need the attention, I need the credit. Paul is none of that. I probably am more of that, right? Like, I'm the person that's out in the community, that's going on podcasts
On the podcast.
Paul's at the office, grinding away. And I think I would be a little bit more insecure if I was Paul, right? Because I don't always communicate things the right way. I'll say things like or when I built this, or when I hired this person, when it's never an I, it's a Paul. It's a me and Paul. It's a team thing, but I don't always communicate that the right way. And I think that would probably rub me the wrong way if he was communicating that. He could care less. He has no ego in it. That is not anything that ever bothers him. We have never had an argument. I think the only disagreement we've ever had is how many dogs I'm allowed to bring to the office, because he sets ground rules, and I have since broken those rules and have more than I was allowed to have.
What are you up to now?
I have 5.
Okay.
But then I let Michaela, who she brings her dog in. Our office manager had a golden retriever that just passed away, so she would come in every day. She's going to get a new one, so we're around 7 or 8 most days.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's where I like it, where Paul feels like this might be a little bit of a distraction, but it all works. But he is a perfect yin to my yang. What we do complement each other, but it's so different. I don't want to be in the office every day. Like, that is, I would get sick of just that environment. So he lets me be out in the world. He lets me go do the charity events. He lets me go do the things that I think that I bring value to the office. And he is happy doing the office stuff and being, the office HR and dealing with all the problems and all the stuff that I just really am not good at. Like, that kind of interpersonal stuff, it drains me, and it drains me to the point where I'm like, I don't really like doing this part of the job, and he picks it all up. So it's just a really good compliment for me. And I think that when you're finding a law partner, the saying is pick your business partner like you're picking your spouse. And I really think that that's true. I think you can get yourself in a lot of trouble picking the wrong business partner. And I think a lot of people rush into that decision, and I would not. I would make sure that is the right match, because I mean, we've been in this for 8.5 years now, and I plan on doing this for another 10 to 15. People think what's good now is going to be good 8.5 years later, and it's not always the case.
Mm-hmm.
People change, people fall out, and having a dissolution of any business is a pain in the ass, and you don't want to have to go through that. So I always warn people, like, make sure you're not rushing into things, because most partnerships fail because of personalities and just human nature. I have no concerns with Paul, like zero. But I also am extremely respectful in a lot of ways because I know that I have to be. If I do a business venture outside of Batta Fulkerson, we do a lot of investing, we own other businesses. No matter what it is, no matter if it's my opportunity, how it comes to me, Paul's my 50-50 partner. So he's my 50-50 partner in everything.
Oh, cool.
So he knows that if I'm out in the, world doing stuff outside of the law firm on other businesses, he's still got a piece.
Yeah.
So there's never going to be a built up resentment or, hey, this isn't really fair that I'm here working and you're doing all these other things, making money on the side.
Yeah.
Like, we always make sure that it's a group thing.
That's a really cool thing, right? Because I think if I'm looking at this from like a macro standpoint,
Yep.
it sounds like you are kind of like the marketer,
Yeah.
the face of the
Yep.
law firm. You're out in the community doing your thing. And
Yep.
he's more of the like, hey, I'm going to run this law firm
For
from
sure.
the inside.
For sure.
And I can see how there might be some resentment.
For
If
sure.
you're out meeting people, you've got business opportunities that
Yep.
present themselves, but you guys are in all of that stuff together. That's a really cool mentality.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
And it's been really successful. It allows us to have a lot of different prongs in the fire. I mean, we own a big part of Spill the Beans coffee shops. We're opening up our 4th and 5th location. We own a
Nice.
coffee company that supplies the beans to Spill the Beans. Like, we've been able to have a lot of really cool opportunities come our way, and both of us have benefited greatly from them and have done well financially from them. So he knows it's a win. I know it's a win, and it's just worked.
Who of the two of you guys had that entrepreneurial attitude, or was that kind of both of you that formed that in law school together?
We both have hustle to us. I think I have more of a educational side to it. I did my master's in business at the same time as my law degree, which I'm so grateful that I did. That degree has helped me just as much as the law degree.
Just because law school probably wasn't hard enough and you're like, fuck it, let's just get my master's at the same time.
And I did them both at the same time in 2.5 years. So
Oh
I
my
would
gosh.
start law school at like 8 a.m., 8:30, and I'd go till like 4. And then I'd drive up from Cal West to State, and my classes would start around 4:45 or 5, and I'd go till 9:30.
I love that.
So I did them both year round, summer as well, in 2.5 years because I was broke as shit and I could not afford my life. I was valeting cars at Stingery nightclub on the weekends
awesome.
just to be able to like get through. And I finished, I had ulcers. Like, it was so
Oh my
bad. Like, my
gosh.
mom's a doc and she was so worried. Like, you can't do this to yourself. But I didn't really have much of a choice. I didn't have a backup plan. Loans will eat you alive. I didn't want to have to do the 4-year normal. So I just put my head down and went.
I knew you were a hard worker when I had asked you to come in early. We're filming right now. It's 9 a.m. We met up probably closer to 8 or whatever.
Yeah.
Most of my podcast guests who own their own law firms, especially, they don't wake up before 10 a.m. You know what I mean? I've got an 8-month-old at home. I've been up since 4. So I'm like, you're like, oh yeah, 8. I'll leave my office and come on down. No problem.
I'm an everyday 5 a.m.er. I'm like, I don't even have an alarm clock at this point. I'm just up. Like, I love my life. I get to live my, best life every day. Like, I wake up with a smile on my face. Like, I'm ready to go. And
That's awesome.
I'm still working 6 days a week. Like that. I don't know any other way, like when I'm done, I'll be done. But while I'm in this, like, that's just my life. Like, it's just how it is.
The funniest thing for me about opening up my own business was the fact that, like, my whole life I was like not the hardest worker, not the guy who's there first in the morning and the last to leave or anything, but like opening up your own business, I did it in part because I'm like, oh, I don't want some boss telling me what to do.
Yeah.
I can make my own hours, work when I want. I'm working harder now than I've ever worked in
People
the past,
don't get
it. Yeah, they don't get it, right? You're always on, especially in our profession, right?
Before you go down that road, I tell people, I'm like, make sure that is for you.
Yeah.
Because some people and some personalities, and it's no knocking, because it's just, are better working for someone because then they can leave a lot of it when they leave at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, right? Like, this doesn't end.
Right.
Like, when you're owning your own shop, I'm fielding calls at 9:30 at night. You know, like it just doesn't end. And you also have to understand the family sacrifice towards that. And you have to have an understanding spouse as well, because if your spouse is like, no, once you're home, that's really hard because you're going to have clients that are calling you. And in our field, it's so competitive that if you're not almost to the point of like, I'm going to be there on call, you're going to lose clients.
Right.
And you lose one case that's valuable, that's a significant hit to a firm. So I take a lot of pride in always being available. And, I don't think I'll always be able to do that, but right now I can. And Paul's got a family, so I feel that. Like, that is my job. Like, all the new calls come to me. My phone's on me at all times. We settled a case a few years ago for like $4 million. And I asked the guy afterwards, I'm like, hey, why'd you come to us? Like, I know you shopped around. Like, I know you went and met with other guys, and I know who you met with. And he was like, oh, you don't remember the first time I called you? I was like, no, I have no idea. And he was like, you answered your phone and you were at a Lakers game. And I was like, really? He was like, yeah, you were at the game. I heard everything in the background. You told me you were at the game, and you told me you'd call me on the drive home. And he was like, as soon as we hung up, I was like, that's my guy.
That's
like,
awesome.
You're going to answer the phone at a Lakers game. Like, you're my guy.
Yeah.
And settled the case for $4 million. So
That's
it's like,
really
you just
cool.
never know, like, like what people are looking for. But a lot of law firms, the complaint that I hear is communication.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to be that. Like, I don't want to be that attorney that's like a mill where I can't be serving clients myself personally when they need me. And that's just how we built the place.
So talk to us about how you balance it. And really what I want to get to is kind of the theme for our show here today.
Yeah.
Okay. I think a lot of our viewers are going to be tuning in because they see the success that Batta Fulkerson has as this firm that clearly markets itself very well. You obviously have a volume of business to you, yet you're able to run your firm in a way that is not a mill.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the few law firms that I've seen in San Diego that still has talented litigators who can try cases that they strike fear into the hearts of insurance defense firms when they see Batta Fulkerson on the other side of the V. So how do you manage the volume business and yet still maintain this successful trial law firm?
A couple ways. Systems and processes would be the number one thing that I would tell anyone. And most business owners, not just law firms, do not have systems and processes. And when I say systems and processes, it's not that it's in your head, right? It's not that, oh, well, this is what we do and this is how we do it. I need to be able to see it in a flow chart. I need to be able to see it visually. I need to be able to have, for every single position in your firm, from your secretary that's answering the door, to your law clerk, to your paralegal, to your attorneys, what are their job responsibilities in every different situation that they're going to face? And that should be completely written down. There shouldn't be any, oh, well, what do I do in this situation? For example, the person who answers your door, what are they saying when they answer your door? Where are they sitting someone? What are they offering them to drink? What are they giving them? What are they collecting? How are they ending that meeting? Like, all of that stuff should be spelled out, and it's not in most places. And I call it like your alien abduction manual, where if I was picked up off this earth by aliens tomorrow, could someone come sit in my seat? Could I give them my manual? And could they figure out over the course of a few days what I do? And they might be able to not do it the same way that I do it, but they'll be able to get the job done.
Right.
And most firms do not have that. Most businesses do not have that. You will never be able to grow. You'll never be able to scale. You will never be successful without that. And it's a pain in the ass, and it takes time, and you have to break things down. You have to be self-analytical. You have to be able to pull yourself apart and figure out your strengths and your weaknesses and take yourself out of the things that you're weak at. I know what I'm good at, but I also know what I'm not good at and the things that I don't want to do. When we started Batta Fulkerson, I made the decision consciously that I don't want to be a courtroom lawyer. I don't. I wear J's and a t-shirt every single day of my life. Like, this is how I want to dress. I don't ever want to be in trial. I know that some people are like, well, that's what lawyers do. Like, you need to be a trial attorney. Great for them.
Right.
I don't like it. I don't thrive in it. I get anxiety in it, not anxiety because of the act of doing it, the anxiety of the inefficiency of the system. I sit in court and I'm like, you know how many things I could have gotten done while I'm just wasting my time waiting for my name to get called?
Yeah.
Like, it kills me. So what do? We hired amazing people that love that are fish in water. And that's what they want to do every single day. Like Michaela and Taylor and Ed, like that's what they want to do. So I get to go do what I want to do and add value to the firm on the things that I feel like I do really well. And they get to go do what they do. The second part of that is Paul and I are not the success of Batta Fulkerson. It's just the reality of it. With the success of Batta Fulkerson are the people that we have. We have an amazing team of people. I think we're up to 36 people now. And our lawyers are some of the best lawyers that I've met. And not only as lawyers, as humans. Like they're team players. It's a big family. Everyone says that. It really is. You come into the office and you're like, this is different. Like they all hang out outside of the office. They all really appreciate each other. They cover for each other. There's not like oh, well, you got to sign this case and it has more value than like, it is not that. I've never had that with any of them. They're just really good people. And we also make sure that the commission structure is set up where they're going to make really good money. I don't want to cap people. I would never want to work at a place where I had this ceiling over my head where this is what I'm going to make. Human nature is human nature. You know that, and you're not going to put in that extra 10% or 15% to get what the true value of a case is.
Right.
That's how you start to become a mill. People just start settling cases because they need to settle cases.
Right.
I want our attorneys to go out and get every piece of meat that's on the bone. Like I want that thing picked clean, and our commission structure has allowed that to happen. I have attorneys all the time that run other firms that are like, you're paying your attorneys too much. And I just kind of chuckle because it may be a little less money in my pocket, but I'm not going to lose people.
Right.
They're going to stay. They
Right.
get to create their own lives. They get to go buy their houses. They get to start their families. And I get to be a part of that and watch that.
Yeah.
What's cooler than that? Like this kind of fast forwards, but I think about all the time, and this is morbid, but you'll follow me on this. I think about all the time, like when I'm like on my deathbed, and let's give me some credit. I'm 88. Okay. So I made it to 88. And I know that I'm
not getting drunk anymore and purchasing French bulldogs.
No. I don't drink anymore. No more drunk purchases. So I'm 88 and I'm on my deathbed. Am I going to look back and look at my bank account and be like, oh, look at all these ones and zeros? Or am I going to look at like the legacy of the people and what we've built and the people that I got to do it with and those kind of things? And I think about that all the time because it helps guide my decisions. And that stuff is so much more important to me than the money. And so I pay people very well, but I want to because I want the best talent and I want people that take a lot of pride in what they do and that are going to get a great result because it's an extension of my name and my reputation. And more important, and you know this as well, the people that come to us and trust us deserve it.
Yeah.
And there's so many places where I believe that they are not served. I think that there's a disservice done by a lot of firms because all it is money.
Yeah, and you obviously talent when you see it, and you continue to pursue it, right? Like I was talking to Michaela about how she came to you guys.
G. She's a G.
I mean, she's someone that I remembered. I had worked for a friend of mine.
Yeah.
I don't know, 10 years ago at this point, when he was starting out his law firm, and he had a case against her. And I remember she also coached for Cal West, I believe, for their mock trial
still
team.
Does.
And still does.
Yep.
And she became quickly like the head of the insurance litigation department at Allstate for a while. And I know when I recently saw her at a CASD event that she was talking about your pursuit of her and how she wound up at the firm and everything, and obviously made her a deal that she couldn't turn down eventually.
She didn't want him. She wasn't going to leave.
Yeah.
But we were like, who's the next pick, and kind of started hunting her. And then I know she went and interviewed at a couple other places, and it just worked out. And I think she'd say this if you asked her. The reason why she was hesitant about coming over is because on the defense side, she's seen a lot of firms that have done things that she wasn't okay with ethically and pursued cases that she wasn't okay with ethically.
Mm-hmm.
And she was worried she was going to come to an office and be put in that position where she's pursuing frivolous cases or doing things that she wasn't okay with herself. And I think she realized very early on when meeting with Paul and I that was not going to be the case. And she said that. She was like, I'm so happy that I've made this choice because I've never run into that situation with you guys. And I give her, I'm like, hey, if you think someone's faking the funk, we don't have time for that shit.
Right.
Tell them that someone else can help them. Like, I don't ever want any of my staff or my lawyers taking on cases or pursuing cases that are bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just not worth anyone's time. So I am so grateful that Michaela made the decision. I feel very lucky that she did. I know she had other options, but she has been such a good fit for our office.
Yeah.
And it makes me happy that she's happy. I was at a concert, randomly ran into her and her husband. Her husband's a great guy, public defender. And he pulled me aside and was like, I just want you to know. She said, she's like, this is the happiest she's been in her career.
That's really
and
cool.
I like that for me is like, it's the best.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And it all the way around. Taylor Gaines, super talented trial attorney, super just good dude. He's out right now because he's about ready to have his first kid.
Oh, awesome.
So lucky to have him. Very lucky. Ed Mira did the same thing as Michaela, ran Liberty Mutual, Golden Eagle Insurance for a long time, was their head litigator. I've worked with Ed for 13 years now, and he's about ready to retire, about ready to, figure out what his next chapter of life works like, but have that kind of mentorship in my office and have a person of Ed's caliber. Ed speaks 7 languages. Like he's a freak. And that has helped us with culture and with training young attorneys and bringing young attorneys through the system. I had a young guy, Connor Orr, that was with us as a law clerk. I played basketball with his cousin. His cousin asked a favor. Hey, hire my young cousin. He needs some direction in life. Came in as a law clerk, became a paralegal, decided to go to law school. And now he's been an attorney in my office for 2 years.
Oh, really cool.
It's awesome. Like, it's awesome to watch people go through that life journey.
That whole journey.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So the end of it is the people. Like, the people are the key. And you have to hire very strategically. You have to be willing to pay a fair rate. And you have to fire quickly. If someone is not a good fit, so many people let it linger, you got to cut it. It's cancer.
That's a really good point, right? Is that, I think firing is also that other side to this where, a lot of our guests, again, they're law students, they're looking to start their careers, but we've now had the show running for, 6 seasons or so. And a lot of our young audience members are now out in the community practicing attorneys or maybe running their own law firms. And for anyone running your own law firm, when it comes to firing someone, it's one of the most uncomfortable things that you'll ever have to do.
It's terrible.
But what you said is exactly right. Learning how to fire someone quickly is almost as important as the journey of finding the right person
1,000%.
that you're going to hire, that's going to be the right fit, because
1,000%.
you're wasting time otherwise. And just to build on that even a little bit further, recently a friend of mine, he had a law clerk or something for about a year and made an offer to this person that was declined.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that he realized was that he was kind of upset about it at first, right? I just wasted a year training this person, doing this, whatever. And it turns out not to work out. But really, he realized after a while that it's kind of like, this person saved him a ton of time.
For
right?
sure.
If this person wasn't happy and they ended up accepting the job and working for another couple of years, it's like being rejected by a girl at a bar.
It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah. It's exactly you're saving yourself a lot of time.
People are butthurt. I'm like, this was in your best interest.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's 100% the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. In talking about Michaela and hearing some of the other people that you've hired, I don't know about the departments that you have at your firm, but it obviously sounds like you have built a very successful trial department. People who are fish in water, as you describe, and like being in trial. That is the apex of being a lawyer in their eyes. There's also this other side to it that you describe, right? With systems, with processes. I have 2 questions. One is, did you know the systems and processes part of it before you started your law firm? Is that something that you learned in business school or enjoyed reading or doing, on your own? And as a separate aside from that, when you formed this law firm with Paul, Was that your vision the whole time? Hey, we're going to have this volume side of the business, but then we're also going to have this trial side of the business that, like, when we need to act on these cases and show insurance companies that we're willing to go the whole way, we can.
So, first question.
Two-parter.
Ask the first one again, so I can come back to the second.
Yeah, the systems and processes, just hearing you describe it, you sound like my cousin who's a marketer. And he's telling me all the time, like, this is how you do it and how you run a business. It's a very business mindset to have that in place that a lot of lawyers, like you and I discussed, they don't have that. So did you learn that in business school, or is that something that you just knew from the beginning?
I learned a lot of it. I learned the general part of it, like the concept, if you will. So I had systems and processes, but they were in my head. Okay. And we started to grow, and we started to grow quickly, and I'll go over the growth, and I'm happy to, give my insight on why I think we grew as quick as we did. But what happened was we're probably 3 years in, doing very well, better than I would have expected. I didn't expect to have the growth rate that we did. And I had some ego and was like, we're great. Like, no firm has grown this fast. Like, no firm's hitting the numbers this early on that we're hitting. It was ego. And I have a friend who's a business consultant, and his name is Jason Cisneros. And he was my friend prior to starting the firm. Like, he's just a good guy. I've known him for a long time. And he kept telling me, he's like, hey, like, you need me to come in and help you. Like, let me help you grow. And I was always like, I'm not going to pay you $25,000 for 3 days. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, I don't need you. Like, straight to his face. Like, I don't need you. And finally he was like, listen, as your friend, I'm telling you, you do. If you have me come in for 3 days and it doesn't make sense for you, I'll give you every dollar back. Like, I'm your friend. I'm telling you I will. I'm like, cool, no worries. And he came in for 3 days and just tore me apart and was like, well, let me see your systems and processes. I'm like, well, I could tell you what they are. He's like, that doesn't do shit for you. Like, and just tore me apart and tore my ego apart. Like, made me realize, like, I don't know what I don't know. And I was out in front of my skis, and I needed to dial things in. And that was a huge change for us. And I will always be grateful for Jason for that. And it's the best money that I've spent. And I think that a lot of people are in that situation, and you have to know that there are outside experts that do this that are always going to be better at that part of it than what I am. And I think you have to reach out to those type of people. And he really helped us take it to that next level of growth. And I still stay in touch with Jason. He's still a good friend of mine. And that's a moment in our practice that I think was very pivotal. Now, I think our growth and our success was because that was more from my marketing side and my business side. Like, when we started the firm, I immediately knew we were going to do this different. I didn't like how most law firms run. I did not like the firm that I came from, how it ran. Like, I wanted to break everything, rebuild it the way that we wanted to. And from the marketing to the bulldog to just how the firm was built, like, we really kind of recreated the law firm that we wanted to create outside of the model of a normal firm. And it was a really rough 18 months because in order to do that, you can't take money off the table. So it was 18 months that Paul and I were grinding that we did not take a dollar. So every dollar was reinvested into the business. That was how we hired Ed. I don't know too many firms that a year in they're hiring, a head litigation attorney, because most firms can't afford it.
So was that your first hire? You thought to yourselves, like, this was the most immediate need, was hiring someone who is a seasoned litigator who can kind of run that part of the show for you guys?
Him and Carolyn Lucetti, who was his paralegal, who was the first paralegal in my law career that kind of just, showed me the ropes. And she's obviously, we're all close with her because I've known her for a really long time. So her and Ed were our first two big hires, and then just started growing from there. But every dollar for 18 months was reinvested into the business. We did not take a single dollar off the table, to the point, and I've told this story before, that Paul came to me probably 16 months in and was like, hey, I'm going to start driving for Uber. Like, I can't pay my bills. Like, I can't pay my rent. Like, I got problems. And I just begged him. I was like, just give it a couple more months. Like, I know we're going to hit, where we need to. it's not that we couldn't take money off the table, but I came from a place that always had financial issues, a firm that always had financial issues. And so my thing was, we're not going to take a dollar off the table until we have 6 months of overhead in the bank ready to go. And then we can take a disbursement.
What was your like number, or without getting specific about it, how did you know what your number was that you were like, okay, now we can?
I knew what my overhead was, right? Like, and it's funny, you start a firm and you're like freaking out. You're getting an overhead of, let's say, 30 grand or 40 grand the first couple of years, something like that, a month. And that sounds really high. I think my overhead right now is like 350 G's a month. So
Right.
like it escalates quickly. And so I wanted at least, what was it at the time? 250 G's, I think is what it was,
Right.
in the bank account before
Right.
we take a disbursement. Because then if COVID happens, the world shuts down, I'm not having to lay people off. I'm not
Right.
having to make decisions and change our practice because of money. And we've kept that same thing. So it's the same thing right now. We have to have that reserve before we ever take a disbursement. So there's never like, oh, I'm waking up in the middle of the night, like, how am I going to pay for this trial? Or how am I going to pay for this? Like, or if I want to do a new marketing venture, am I going to have the funds for it? I got it sitting there because we've always built that in, that padding into the business. And I cannot stress that enough to young business owners. Like, do not take your first hit and go out and buy a BMW. Like, live poor, live broke for a while.
Right.
Build your business up, because it will reward you for years and years if you do it like that for the first few. And I think that was our big difference from what I've seen for a lot of firms, is a lot of people are taking money off the table early on, and we did not. And the other part was just going, hey, we're going to market this different than anyone's ever marketed it. I started doing Facebook and Instagram videos back in 2016 before anyone was doing them. And we were, pushing sponsorship on Facebook pretty hard. No one was doing it. I wish I would have gone harder now, like looking back, because it was such a good open market and it was such cheap exposure. But we did a lot of guerrilla marketing. When we came up with the bulldog mascot, I printed shirts. Our logo is like a bulldog wearing glasses and a tie. And so we printed shirts with that on the front and our ad on the back. And I think we gave out 1,000 of them in the first like 3 months.
Oh, cool.
And it costs like, let's say $8,000, $8 a shirt, $8,000 to push all these shirts out. And Paul's like, you're spending $8,000 on shirts? And I'm like, bro, you have 8,000 walking billboards out there. And we started doing really like,
who did you give those out to, or like, how did you decide where to give those?
Bro, it was like true guerrilla marketing. Like, so when I left the firm prior, I left somewhat unexpectedly. I found out some stuff that I was not okay with. So I literally like left on a dime, like was like, this is my day, I'm out, see you later. And I'd, as a young, stupid kid, bought some very expensive cars. So I had a Ferrari, I had a convertible Bentley, I had an Aston Martin, all at the same time. Idiot. Hellcat. And I'm like, I'm fucked. Like, I got all these cars. They're depreciated, so you can't just sling them and not lose money. Like, what's the move? And so I wrapped them all with bulldogs. Like, I wrapped them all with the advertising, and I just started parking them around town strategically, like Little Italy, downtown. And we started to get calls and cases off the cars. And so then we turned it into a game on Facebook where it was like, hey, if you see one of our cars around town, take a picture of it, tag us on Facebook or on Instagram, and we'll send you a shirt and a $5 Starbucks card.
Oh, cool.
And those just started going wild.
Oh,
so
cool.
It literally guerrilla marketing and just started to spread. And the word started to spread, and we started to get busier and busier. And then you have to hire more people. And that's just kind of how it went. And then it was like, okay, well, that marketing campaign was fun. What can we do that no one else has done?
Yeah.
And then it was like the next one. So it was like, let's wrap the Zamboni at the goals game. And, like, it was just fun stuff. I have a full-on bulldog mascot suit in my office right now. like people are like, what is this? I'm like, we do things that are different.
Yeah.
Because in today's world, you have to be different to have attention. And that's just the reality of it. If you're just going to be the cookie cutter, fit in the box that everyone else does, you're going to get lost in the crowd.
Right.
You drive down the 5 freeway and I put a 8-foot tall LED glow up bulldog on the roof of my building. Like it is like a bulldog bat symbol. You can't miss it. You
it's
know,
honestly, it's how I first found out about you guys, right? I'm driving home from the airport or whatever it is. My office is downtown. So when I leave and it's dark out, every single night I see that. I have to ask you about the building, the billboard. I want to ask you about your first firm that you had mentioned a couple times. But you talk about these cars, so I got to ask you about that first. Idiot. So tell me what made you purchase these cars, and you did it, it seems like, without the idea that you were going to use these for a later marketing ploy.
No idea.
What went into that? How did you decide to buy, and why did you buy all these cars?
Because I was a dumb young idiot, and I wanted, few reasons. One, I was a valet for 7 years, right? And a broke valet, like driving a 350Z with a window that wouldn't roll down, that you'd have to open your door if you needed to, like communicate with
the
like a drive-through.
350Z is a cool car though.
Loved it, but it was an old 350Z.
Yeah.
And so when I came into money, my first job, I got a very low offer, and I had obviously my business degree and my law degree. I'd graduated at the top of my class with both, and I was offered, I think, $55,000 a year salary, which I found to be pretty insulting. But my counter was, hey, no problem, I'll take your 55 G's, but I want 50% of every case that I bring in.
Oh, cool.
55% or 50% of attorney's fees. And as a young first-year lawyer, I don't think there was an expectation that I was going to bring in much business. I think the first year I brought in 75 cases. I think second year I brought in like 150, and from there it was 200.
So you
cases.
knew you could do this already.
I knew
just from your first year of being a practicing attorney.
Sure. Like I knew that was something that I could do. Like was quote unquote the rainmaking.
And how were you doing it while you're working for another firm, right? Because you don't have those same opportunities to wrap your car in Batta Fulkerson. So
I was at every single networking event that you can ever think of. Like every night of the week I was at a networking event. Every morning I was trying to be at a networking breakfast. Like that was my life.
And when you say networking, right? Because it's like you could network in personal injury fields, but who's going to send a case to a first year lawyer? So how do you choose which networking events you're going to as a first year?
I think it's consistency, because no one's going to refer to you early on. They need to get to know you as a human. But if you keep showing up at things over and over again and people actually get to know who you are, people get comfortable, and then they're going to send you stuff.
Yeah.
And then once you start getting good results, the rest kind of does it for itself, right?
Yeah.
And still, even with marketing that we do, I'd say 80% of the business we get at Batta Fulkerson's word of mouth reputation. And that's, to me, the best, because it's like you're not ever having to sell anyone. I don't want to have to sell anyone. If anything, I want it to be the reverse, where it's like, do I want to take your case? Yeah. Are you a good human?
Yeah.
Like, are you someone that I can be around for the next year that I want to deal with? So it just kind of built on itself. But the cars was part because of being a broke college student, valeting those nice cars. I had it in my head. 2, the firm I was working for, that was kind of like the MO, like the head lawyer, like that's what he was, like all these nice cars. And so I kind of fell into that trap. And it was about outside validation. It was an ego stroke. It was, I'm going to do this, look at me. It was youth. It was immaturity. It was just, I needed to grow up. And I'm glad I got it out of my system. It's a blessing to know that buying an exotic car is not going to make you happy, because it's not. Like it is,
or 4,
I mean, it's just it was a reality that I think that most people realize later on in life, that I got lucky to realize early on in life, that material things are not going to be what fill you up and what make your soul happy. And so I'm very glad that I went through it. But yeah, when I left, I had 4 exotic cars that I had to figure out.
Still have any of them?
Nah, I sold them all. Once I was able to, I sold them. So
can we talk about the firm that you were with? This is King Amanpour. Is the first firm. Yeah. So how did you wind up at that firm? And what was your path like while you were there?
Paul was the one that he was interning there, and was like, I'd interned at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Didn't like it. I was put on a cannabis case where they were prosecuting a California state cannabis dispensary that was following California state laws, but cannabis is illegal federally. And so the U.S. Attorney's Office was prosecuting them and basically seized all their assets. And I'm like, wait,
This
they're
sucks.
following the state law.
Right.
Like they're doing what the state allows them to do. And you're going to come in and take all their possessions and their cars. And
Yeah.
like, I just couldn't live with myself. It's
Yeah.
like, this isn't for me. And I went to a corporate firm for an internship. Paperwork on paperwork on paperwork. Like you never meet a client. It just wasn't for me.
Sounds
And
like
then-
the opposite of what you say you enjoy doing at your firm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't my personality. And then Paul was like, hey, well, I'm working at a personal injury firm. You want to come try it? And went, and immediately it was like, I'll do this for the rest of my life. I mean, immediately.
Yeah.
There was no question.
What did you love about working at King Amanpour's place while you were there?
I love the interpersonal connection with people. I love that I get to meet new people every single day. Like that to me is the best thing. Like I've met so many close friends, so many people that I'll have in my life for forever, being able to help them. And you have people that come in, and I'm sure it's the same thing for you. You have people that come in and their life's turned upside down, and you get to help them put it back on the right. Like what's better than that? You know, like to me, like it's the coolest thing ever that you get to help change people's life in a good way. And so once I got a taste of that, it was over. And that was what I was going to do forever.
So how long did you and Paul spend at King Amanpour's shop? And what did you guys learn from working there?
4 years. I mean, I definitely learned the basics, right? Like, this is what a demand is. This is, like I learned it, but also a lot of just like the way that I don't want to do things. Like I would rather do this way. I'd rather do this way. It's the same reason I started my own dog rescue. You're around dog rescues and you're like, oh, I wouldn't do it that way. I do it this way.
Yeah.
And just that realization, my business brain has always been that way. I always knew that eventually I'd start my own thing. I didn't know when. I probably should have made the jump earlier, but life kind of pushes you. I'd say that's one of my regrets, is that I didn't make the jump on my own under my own terms. It was more of like you find out certain things and now you're forced to make the jump, right? And that's something I look back on with regret, that I know that I should have just on my own gone, hey, I'm out.
Yeah.
But such is life, and it's a great lesson, and I'm very glad that it worked out the way that it did, and it gave me the insight to build Batta Fulkerson the way that we have. And I don't think we would have built it the way that we have and had this success that we've had without that experience. So I'm very grateful for that.
So, I'm a new parent, so I always use new parent analogies and things like that. But I think of parenting like at least for me, I've tried to take the good that my parents have done in raising me and my wife's parents have done in raising her, and leave all the rest, right?
Exactly.
It's like you take the good and you bring it with you into your new role. What was some of the good that you guys brought from King Amanpour into Batta Fulkerson? And, specifically, what did you like about the way that they ran their practice that you've tried to implement into yours?
I can't really speak on the second part because there's not much on the way that they ran their practice that I brought, to be honest with you. Very little. But the people, like I met some really good people at that office that are still with me. Ed Mira, I met at that office. Carolyn Lucetti, I met at that office. Jorge Ayala, who's still with me, I met at that office. Like I met some really good people. Our first office manager, who's one of my best friends, Jose Villa, I met at that office. I wouldn't have met those people without that experience.
Did they have systems and processes the way that your friend Jason told you this is vital and you need to implement this in order to grow at their practice that you've tried to take over? And
no.
The reason that I'm asking is I think it's impossible for anyone to walk around San Diego without seeing a King Amanpour billboard or bus stop or bus or whatever, right? And it's like, from the outside looking in, I'm looking at that like these guys have to have 1,000 attorneys or case managers or something, or some system and process in place, because what are they spending? $1 million a month on marketing, right?
Probably.
It's like, so from the inside, what was it like working there, where they obviously have this huge marketing machine? You guys now have a large marketing machine.
Yeah.
Did you try to take anything that they were doing, or what was their system for handling cases?
I kind of was
like
the
that?
one, and I, shoot myself in the foot because put me in a position where I had so much more. I kind of rolled out the marketing. Like,
For King
yeah,
Omnivore?
like I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
that's my background. That's what I do. Like I know that game. So, you know, from the consecutive numbers and those kind of things, like trying to track cases, those kind of things. I was the one that put all that stuff in place. So
Gotcha.
that's why I think it was easier for us at Batta Fulkerson, because I knew how to do that.
You
right?
sort of gave King that
Yeah, I mean,
nudge that he needed, that maybe Jason gave to you at your firm to take you to that next level.
and don't get me wrong, it wasn't all me, but I was a big part of that, and a big part of that ability to be able to grow that way. But I can only speak to when I was there. We didn't have the 1,000 attorneys. We didn't have the staff and the support for that kind of growth. And that's why we were there 80 hours a week. And that's why, it was literally killing me. Like I just couldn't do that kind of work. And I also, if you're going to run volume, you have to have proper support, because if not, like I just don't think that it works out well for anyone. And
Right.
that was a big part of why it wasn't going to work for me.
How do you know which one to do first, right? So if you're helping out your old boss or you're starting this on your own, I think a question a lot of people face when they start marketing for their own law firms is like, hey, I want to get word out there. I want the phone calls. I want the business, but I need to make sure that the infrastructure is in place to handle it if I do get that stuff. So what do? Go hire people and make sure that everything's in place and then go see if I can get the business? Or, it's a chicken and egg kind of situation. So how did you face that problem?
My personal belief now is that you have to have the infrastructure in place before you can turn on the switch. We just opened a firm in Idaho, in Boise, a couple years ago, and I have pushed back turning that switch several times because I need to have infrastructure in place. We're now there, so I'm actually flying out, and we're gonna go do a couple ad spots and do that kind of stuff. I'm from
Cool.
Boise.
Why Idaho?
I'm from Idaho.
Oh, right on.
I grew up in Boise. Grew up right outside of Boise.
Nice.
My mom's still there. My sister's still there. Why Idaho was during the pandemic, when California started talking about forcing mandating vaccinations.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 very key players in my office that were like, we'll quit.
Yeah.
We're not doing it. And I was worried it was going to get there at the time because of where it was trending. And so my answer was, I'm going to take the Idaho bar. I'm going to start an Idaho office. I'm going to hire you as Idaho employees. You guys work remotely in California, but we're going to just kind of bypass this. It never ended up happening, but I'd already taken the bar. So we're like, here we are.
I already walked through the door.
Here we are. And
might as well open a law firm.
100%. We started getting cases, and we started getting good cases.
Yeah.
And so then it just kind of grew on itself. And we bought a building out there last year, and we're going to kind of just do the same thing there that we did here. And we won't have near the presence or the size. I don't want that there, but it's a great way for me to be able to go back and see my family, and for me to have a foot in the door there. And I'm helping, parents of people that I went to middle school with. Like, what's cooler than that?
That's really
like, it's
cool.
awesome to see that full circle. So it's been great. But I am a firm believer, don't turn on that switch until you're ready for it.
So I guess, Dan, my question to you is, it seems like now you're in a position where you can say that, right? Like you have the success and you have the ability, seemingly, to build that infrastructure and make sure it's in place and hire the right people. A lot of our younger attorneys who are trying to start out their own practices don't, right? And so I guess when you look back on starting Batta Fulkerson, it's like, can you give our audience members a couple of those foundational steps that maybe you took before you made your first hire, or when you knew it was the right time to bring over some of these guys, or even, buying a building, right, where you guys are practicing now? How did you know when it was time to do all of these things? And you've talked to us a little bit about that period of 18 months where you ran lean and everything, but if you can put yourself back in your shoes from back then, what were those first few steps, and how did you know it was the right time to take them?
For me, it was hiring early on, making sure you had good personnel. We did not do any mass advertising early on in any way. It was all guerrilla marketing because I didn't want to turn on that switch. So it was getting the personnel in place to know that we could handle the cases. And then Paul and I both just had a belief that it was going to work. Like, we knew it was going to work, and not like, oh, this is going to work. hopefully it was like it will work.
Right.
And once we knew that, then it was like, okay, we can slowly start turning this on. And I think that's where people get ahead of themselves, is like they just go all in, and it's like, no, you can do this in a gradual way where you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to turn the faucet on this much, I can handle this much water, now I'm going to turn it on a little bit more now that I have more infrastructure in place. You can do that. You just have to be very strategic about it. But I think hiring personnel early on was a really, really important thing for us, because once that was in place, then we could handle more cases. And from there, it was like, okay, now I keep my attorneys at a certain caseload. I want everyone to be between 40 and 50, right? Pre-lit and lit cases in combo. I don't want anyone to be over 50, because I think then you're not servicing cases the right way. So I just use that. I'm like, okay, you're at 50, we got to hire another attorney, got to hire another paralegal. Now we're ready, go. So we've just stayed on that formula, and we're hiring right now because of that very reason. It's like, I need more people.
What was the first position that you hired when you guys started?
Paralegal.
And how many positions did you fill in what order until you eventually were able to bring, was it Ed, you said?
Ed was third. So
okay.
Paul, myself, working out of my condo in Little Italy.
Mhm.
Then we got a barrister's suite office. We shared the office, so a single room. It was like $500 a month. Shared that. Hired Carolyn, paralegal. She got her own office.
Was she a seasoned paralegal?
Seasoned paralegal.
Okay,
Yep,
so
she was
like
great.
someone who's been around, who knows what
Knows
to
the
do, and you
game,
don't.
knows us, knows
Yeah.
how to, can file, can do all the things. Yep, great with discovery. She was great. Hired Jose Villa. It's kind of like office manager, just handling all sorts of things, like everything.
Like
Joe
a jack
just
of all trades kind of thing.
break a chair, Joe will fix it. Like he's that guy, like just awesome. And then Ed was our third. So then Ed and Carolyn were in a barrister's suite office themselves. Jose was in with Paul and myself, three of us, like in a room like this, like teeny, and then slowly just starting getting barrister's suite offices next to each other, to the point I think we had 5 all next to each other lined up, and barristers were like, this is not what this model is for. Like,
Right.
you guys are you need your own
This
office.
is now just a law firm,
this is now
right?
just a law
Yeah.
firm. And so then we went and got a suite probably 2 years in at Wells Fargo. And so we took the 14th floor, Wells Fargo, half the 14th floor, and signed a 7-year lease. And we're there, and then had room for growth. So then started growing strategically, kept rolling, started to do more marketing because we had more infrastructure. And we were going to be there for 7 years. And the building came about because I lived on that street 5 doors up from that building. And so I'd always drive by it, didn't really think much of it, but had a dream one night of that building. And I was flying into San Diego, and I was flying, landing as you do over the city, and on the side would be Mission Hills. And I saw that building, and on the top of it was a big lit up bulldog.
Cool.
And I woke up the next morning, and I called my buddy Scott, and I was like, he's a commercial broker. And I'm like, Scott, I want to buy this building. Like, we're supposed to buy this building. It's for us. And he was like, let me look into it. Checked it. It was owned by University of California School Systems. They own it. He's like, they don't sell their real estate. They hold their real estate. It's one of their, asset profiles. Like, they're not going to ever sell it. Get over it. 6 months goes by. He calls me. He's like, you got some weird Yoda type energy. Like, they're listing this building. They listed it with my firm. Like, what are the odds? And I'm like, well, let's go. It's owned by California, so they don't sell it on a normal like market sale. It's an auction.
The university or the state?
The state.
Oh, okay.
So it's an auction. So you're not allowed to see the inside of the building. You can only walk the outside of the building. You're not allowed to do an inspection. You write your amount of money that you're going to pay for the building on a piece of paper. You put it into
Like a silent auction.
Silent auction.
Oh, wow.
I flew up to Oakland, put it in myself, like wanted to do it. Paul and I got a bunch of advice on market value and just made the best bid that we could. I think we outbid the next by $400,000, which everyone's like, oh, you overpaid $400,000. I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
I wanted the building.
I made it back in like the first month that we were open.
Easy.
Right?
Yeah. So bought the building, had to gut it. First floor had to gut completely. Went through that process. That was about a year of a remodel. Moved in 2020, and it's been our home since.
That
and
is so cool.
It's amazing.
That's
it's
awesome.
The greatest home for us.
It honestly is. And every time I drive by, I'm like, one day.
Yeah.
That's
You
everyone's goal, right?
You will.
It's like it's really cool, and I love the Yeah, when you see it lit up at night, it's
Yeah.
a staple of San Diego at this point. You
And that's
know?
what we had in our head. Like, I wanted to be like, when you're a child, right? You're a new dad, so you know this. You see, when you're in the backseat driving, right? As a kid, you're seeing things different in a different perspective than an adult, right? It's like, oh, like there's the blue slug bug house, like, and I wanted that to be there's the bulldog building.
Yeah.
Like that was my whole concept. Was like as a kid, like that, mom, the bulldog building. And so that's kind of what it's become. And it's great. Like I love it. I still feel surreal. You walk in there and I'm like, this is not ours. Like, how is this?
So
How did
cool.
this happen? And it's been a great home. We are full, which is fucking crazy to me. Like, I
Yeah.
never would have thought that we would fill that thing up.
Yeah.
And now we are. So we got to figure some stuff out. We'll stay there. That'll be the hub, but we're going to have to figure out a secondary office, which is a great problem, but definitely a problem because we need to hire. So it's just, you
Just been
evolve.
taking a lot of naps trying to get a dream of the next building coming
No,
in. Or
I
what?
already got it. I know what the move is, but it's finding the right move. But it's I think that's how you build any successful business. You evolve when you need to evolve. Like we're now forced where we're gonna have to make another step and make another purchase and hire more people because we need to.
Yeah.
And I think when you're doing things like that, when it's not forced, it usually is going to put you in a pretty good place.
Yeah.
And I would also tell any young attorney that should be your goal, is buying your own real estate, because rent is a crack problem and you're burning money. And yes, it's a write-off, but I'll tell you what, taxes are real. And the only way that you can really try to mitigate your tax is by buying a building. Cost segs, how you can write stuff off, it has saved us. And
Yeah.
so I think that that's kind of our goal. That's why we bought the building last year in Boise, was for a similar reason. We want to have real estate assets. We want to be able to have that tax mitigation structure. So I think every 3 or 4 years, the plan is buy a new building.
Cool. That's a good suggestion for people who have that long-term goal.
Yeah.
And, I do hear, I can see it now, right? I've had my practice maybe for 6 years or
Yep.
so, and I see a lot of the attorneys that I have on the podcast here. There's kind of those two schools of thought, right? It's like, hey, we want to grow, keep getting bigger, keep expanding. And then you have other attorneys that they've found success as sole practitioners, and they have their little team of a paralegal or an office manager, and they're like, this is me and this is it, right? And I don't know if it's a fear to take that next step, or just you get comfortable with pulling money out of the business and you never get a chance to reinvest it and to grow, right? But what you guys have been able to do is really remarkable in such a short amount of time, and that's really cool. I think that
I have a question for you real fast.
Yeah.
You just started a new firm.
Yeah.
One, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
How did you pick your business partner?
That's a good question. Kind of because of that problem that I'm telling you about, right? It's like I've had success as running my own ship now for the last 6 years, and I feel like I've gotten to a point where unless I take that next step and find that business partner that has all of the qualities that Paul has for you and is able to run the firm in a way that I'm not able to do, I'm going to continue doing what I do now.
For sure.
What I talk about with my wife is I tell her, I'm like, look, when we first started my firm, right, I told you, hey, don't worry, like I'm going to make this work. Like this is it for me, right? There is no failing. And now I've seen over the last 6 years that I can always do this. If the partnership doesn't work out,
You'll be all right.
I will always be all right. I know I can run a law firm and be successful.
For sure.
And we can be comfortable. We can grow a family and be happy. But if I want to get to that next level, it's about hiring that next person and doing that thing, forming that partnership, being invested with someone the way that you're describing. When I talk to traditional attorneys about this, my father practiced in New Jersey for 35 years. They can't wrap their heads around it. They're like, you've worked for the last 6 years growing your practice. Now you're going to give half of your business away to someone. And you're like, I don't see it that way.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
see it as I'm forming a partnership with someone where I'm going to 10x my business over
sure.
the next couple of years,
For sure.
rather than give half of it away. And
For
it's
sure.
hard to explain to people who don't have that same mentality.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, the reward of being able to have success with someone else and celebrate with someone else, like, you'll always be able to celebrate with your wife, right? She's always going to be there for your victory. She's going to be there when it's not like that. That's always going to be there. But to have someone that you can do it with on a business level is the most rewarding shit.
Yeah.
Like when Paul and I like hit a big settlement, to like walk into his office and be like, well, we haven't done this before, you know, like it's just a really, really cool thing to be able to do it with someone.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do it on my own. Like I'm
Definitely.
now doing it this way. Like I wouldn't have as much fun doing it. Like he's my, like, one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And I harass him all day long. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you walk into my office, it's like brothers. It's like, that's just how we are. Like, and to be able to come into that environment every single day is good as the money and as good as, you know, the financial success.
Yeah, and that's huge too, right? I talked to a buddy of mine. So in my building, there's 3 practices. There's an employment law firm that's a partnership.
Yep.
There's another sole practitioner in there who is a couple years ahead of me in his career. It's someone who I used to work for. Yep. And then there's my practice. And I've talked to the guys that are partners. We played golf last week or something. I was asking them before I formed my partnership, what was the most important quality that you found in your partner? And the guy that I was talking to, you know, he paused for maybe like 10 seconds and he was like, trust for him. He's like, I trust my partner with my life.
For sure.
Like, I trust him more than like family. Like, they have that. And I was like, that's really cool, right? Because you hear like, hey, I want to work with someone who's got other characteristics, that strength that I don't have, things like that. But that trust is something that is really tough to replicate.
Yeah.
And to hear you talk about Paul that way, as a brother, as someone that you can go in and do that sort of stuff with, I mean, that's where the most successful partnerships come from, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just fun. Like, you're supposed to have fun doing what you do.
Yeah.
Like, I'll walk into Paul's office like this morning. I'm like, fuck you, Paul. Don't come out of your office for the rest of the day. No one wants to hear from you, and shut his door. And he's just like, but that's how we start, you know, like, it just, it's always a good time. And to be able to do it with someone is just, to me, so much better than doing it on your own. I have another question for you. What's your, like, with new law firm just started, what's your 5-year vision? What's your 10-year vision? Like, what do you want to do with it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And that's really the other half of the partnership thing for me, is like, you want to make sure that you have the same vision as your partner, right? Because if you, I tried to form a partnership a couple of years ago with 2 other guys. And it quickly became apparent that, like, we didn't have the whole, like, oh, you're going to be out of the office marketing.
For sure.
Like, they're like, I don't know. That's not cool with me. Like, you're going to have to work on some cases and stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know if this is going to work, right? Like, and you have to know that from the beginning. So there's a division of labor aspect to working with my partner that, you know, we've been working together. We had worked together in the past. We're going to be, you know, officially forming this partnership now over the next couple of weeks. But there's kind of that division of labor that just makes sense for us. Yeah. And I think what I have found is the most successful law firms, rather than reinvent the wheel, you try to replicate what they're doing well, right? Yep. And one of the reasons that I invited you on this show, and that I think a lot of people will want to hear from you, is that I love you have one of the few law firms that has this system in place of both marketing and trial skill. Yeah. I went to law school to be that trial attorney that you describe as like, hey, I don't know that I might be wasting time doing this, this or that, whatever, right? And you need that other person that does what you do in order to keep the law firm successful, keep the cases coming in. I like to be that guy in trial. I love doing that. And my partner is more like you, right? He's the guy who's like, systems in place. I want the bottom line at the end of the day to be what it is. I want to run a business. And I think that that's something that's really hard to find.
I agree.
You know, I want to throw it back on you for a second. Was that that vision, I sort of asked you this earlier. I don't know if we really hit on it, but was that vision of marketing and trial skill, was that the thing that you guys had in your head when you started Batta Fulkerson, or was that one of the things that evolved over time the way that you've described?
No, it was definitely a vision, because I'd seen from other firms from where I'd come from that didn't have that trial side, that you're going to get put in a box by insurance companies.
Right.
If they know you're a pre-litigation firm, they're going to take advantage of you every single time.
Absolutely.
They're going to offer you what they're going to offer you, and it's going to be at a 30 to 40% discount. I didn't want that. Like,
did you see that at King Amanpour's firm?
Yeah, and I saw it at other like larger marketing firms.
Right.
Like, if you don't have that guy in-house that can go to trial and can go, beat up someone if you need to, insurance companies take note of that. And I had insurance companies making those comments to me. And so I didn't ever want that to be what we were building. And so building that trial side early on was important. And that's a big part of the reason, and he's like my older brother now, but that I work so closely with Robert, with Empyrean, is because, in my opinion, there's no one better in the game.
Absolutely.
Like, that dude you see him in trial and you're like, you're different. Like,
Yeah.
he's just built different. He's a scary, scary, scary individual in a courtroom.
And out, right? Black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Oh, bro, he will choke you out. And he's like my older brother. And like, people are like, will you give all these cases to Robert? And, because any case over a certain value, like, I have great attorneys, but it's a different game when you get into those higher $1 million cases,
Sure.
right? And Robert has 30 years under his belt, and in my opinion is the best to do it in San Diego. And so when I get to that threshold on a case, Robert, here you go.
Yeah.
And he's in-house counsel for us. We're the only firm that he's in-house counsel for. And we have done extremely well together. And people are like, why are you giving away that much equity in a case? And I'm like, well, because it's the right thing to do for a client.
Yeah.
Like, that's the right thing to do. And Michaela's amazing and Taylor's amazing, and they'll get to where he's at someday. But you have to go and try 60 cases like he has to be able to get there. And I just think that that's just kind of been the model for us, is like, hey, don't look at the money side of it and how much we're going to make on the case. Look at what you're going to do to put the client in the best position to make the most amount of money, and the rest will come in.
He's also one of the most generous people with his time and advice. And I had just ended up settling a case at trial call with a buddy of mine who works in my building. We share cases every once in a while on some of the bigger ones. And this one was an MTBI case. So we had consulted with Robert, and my co-counsel was calling him on Saturdays, Sundays. Robert was taking our calls. This is the Saturday and Sunday before we're going to trial, where we're just like, we're putting in, these 20-hour days or whatever the heck it is. And he fields your call and offers you advice, and with no expectation in return. And
it's Robert.
And it's crazy, because those are the people that end up being the most successful in our field, right? Are just the people who give without any expectation. And then, like, that's how you think of them. And those are some of the reasons why you send cases to him. He's the best, and he's going to take care of your clients.
And it's funny, I have like firms all the time from LA, other firms in San Diego, like trial firms, like, hey, like, try us on a case, like, let's work together on a case. I'm just like, straight up, no. Robert will always get all my business. Like, it's loyalty. Like, he's always been there for me when I needed him. I will always be there for him when he needs me, until the day he tells me he's done and is going to go race cars and choke people out for the rest of his life. He'll get all my big cases.
That's
forever.
Really cool.
And that's just, he is my brother. Like, that's just how it is. And so I think that having that has been a huge thing for our office. All my attorneys can do the same thing that you guys did. They go to, they're in their own trials. They're, up in LA trying slip and fall case. They'll call Robert. Hey, what do we do with this? This is what you do. This is what you do. Now do this. Don't do that. That's just what he is. Like, he is truly and genuinely that person, and it's a rarity. And his skill sets are fucking scary.
Yeah.
Like, I've watched him do things in a courtroom where I'm just like, bro, like, what? Like, how did you do that? And he's just that good because he's been doing it for so long. And he'll take a case where, in Robert's, he's like, it's got its warts. It's not great. And I'm like, what'd you get? He's like, oh, 2.8. And I'm like, oh yeah, warts. So like, give me your shit. Cause like, if that's what you're hitting, like he's just that guy.
Yeah. He gave us a piece of advice early on. I'm talking like maybe this time last year in our case that ended up really being a huge difference maker in this one, like to get us into that 7-figure settlement number range where I just don't know that we would have otherwise. And he's just like, he's right about this stuff. It's crazy. How did you first meet Robert? Like, where'd that come from?
So I met Robert at King's office. And then when I left, we left in weird circumstances that I won't go into, but weird circumstances. And I went to Robert for advice. I was like, hey, here's the situation. And once he knew why I left, he was like, hey, I got you. Like, whatever you need, I'm here. And that's how we formed our friendship.
When you say you met him at King's office, just while
he
you were
had
working?
taken a big case for King.
Oh.
And was working on it. And so that's how I'd met him.
Oh, gotcha.
And then I didn't know him very well at all, but was like, reached out to him. I want to have lunch. And that was how.
That's really cool.
We've been friends since.
That is so cool. Yeah. He's one of the few people that like, he talks about righteousness and like walks the walk. You know what I mean? He talks the talk and actually walks the walk. And you look at this guy and you're like, yeah, that'd be really cool to do that one day.
He's that guy. Like he's flown out to Idaho with me. He's met my 92-year-old grandmother. He's, met my whole family. We flew out to Vegas 2 weeks ago for a case. Like he's just that guy. And it's great. And he loves what he does. And he always like, I'm going to retire. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, you're never going to retire. It's not going to happen. Like, you're fish and water. Like, this is what you need to be able to survive.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to. So
also owns his own practice or owns his own building.
Owns his own building, a big building down on Market. We were talking about that last night. Like, great real estate investment. Like, we were talking about like how much equity he's had. And that's why I urge everyone, you don't have to go buy a big building, but buy a space,
Yeah.
Start small and then go from there. I just think that owning real estate in this game is a really important part of building wealth. But yeah, he's done fantastic, and he is a great example for any young lawyer. Reach out to Robert. He is that guy. Like, if you're starting your own practice, don't think you're going to go in and try $1 million case. Reach out to him, get his advice, let him come in, let him co-counsel. Yeah, you're going to give up some equity. It's worth it.
Yeah.
It is worth it. You should not be, in my opinion, you should not be a 2-year attorney or 3-year attorney taking on a $2 million case. Like, you're going to fuck something up.
Yeah.
It's just the reality of it. You don't know what you don't know.
There's so many pitfalls.
There's so many landmines that you're not going to see. Like, don't step on them. Like, it's a disservice to your client. Call someone like him. Bring him on. The nice thing about Robert is he will teach you as you go.
Yeah.
Like, you're not just going to give a case away. He's going to walk you through why he's doing what he's doing, why he's not doing what he's not doing, and you're going to learn. And then eventually you'll be able to do it on your own. And that's the key.
When you were describing hiring at your firm and, you said you started with a paralegal and then an office manager, then you brought in Ed or a big, trial attorney. Do you find that when you hire, you're hiring people in the same sort of fashion? Like, are you adding a lawyer, paralegal, and someone like in these pods the same way? And the reason I'm asking that in this context is like, are you borrowing any of that stuff or learning from Robert as far as what he did and what he does at his firm? Or
Robert thinks I'm fucking crazy. Robert stays lean and mean. He doesn't want to have a big firm.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like recently, I know Jessica joined his firm within the last couple of years.
Jesus, one of the best attorneys I've
She's
met.
fantastic. She spoke at this TBI dinner that I went to that I was like taking notes. I was like, this is great stuff that I'm going to use in this trial that I'm about to go into. And she's fantastic.
I told him last night at dinner, I was like, you wait your whole career to hire someone like that.
Oh, you had dinner with Robert last night.
and he was like, yeah, that's exactly right. He was like, you go your whole career and then you find someone like that.
Yeah.
Like, she is that person.
Yeah.
I love Jessica. Like, I love working with Jessica. She's just a great human being. But yes, for me, I hire like that. For him, he stays lean and mean. Robert doesn't like to do the business side of it. Like, that's why we work so well together. He's like, go fishing. go get me stuff to go, chop up
Yeah.
and put on our table. And that's why it's so great. Like, that's why I love the relationship, because he wants to be in a courtroom. He wants to be trying cases. He wants to try 5-6 cases a year. That's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
He does not want to deal with HR. He doesn't want to deal with employees.
Right.
When I tell him I have 35 people, he's like, you're fucking crazy. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, I can't even imagine. Like, that's the side of it he does not like. I've always said this, and I've said this to him. When he's done, I'm like, don't be done. Just come over here. Like,
Yeah.
you can just go try cases. I'll deal with all the bullshit.
Yeah.
I'll deal with all the headache. You just go try cases. And I still say that will happen. Like, I still have that in my head that will be what ends up happening.
Did you have a dream about it?
Not a dream about it, but it's just like we've gotten so close. And him and I have talked about it. Like, I don't know when, if he'll be ready for that. Maybe it's 10 years from now. Maybe it's 15 years from now. But at a point, he's going to go, I don't want to have to deal with the overhead. I don't want to have to deal with any of the bullshit.
Yeah.
I just want to go try a case when I want to go try a case. And he'll have a place with me.
Yeah.
And we'll do it together.
That's cool.
Like, I just see that happening eventually. But in the meantime, it's a great setup. Like, our offices work very well together, and my attorneys have a tremendous amount of respect for him, and they'll work cases up and then hand them off, and they're not worried about it. Like, they know what he's going to go do. And so it's worked out really, really well, and we've hit amazing numbers, and he's had a lot of success from it, and I've had a lot of success from it, and I have one of my best friends, and that's probably the best part. So
that's so cool.
It's awesome.
Does, I don't think I've spent much time talking about Paul at all. And like, I know that we've obviously talked about some of the qualities he has and stuff, but when you guys started out, was that Paul's strength? And did he want to be trying cases and in the courtroom, or is he just more like, what is his role at the firm now? I know you've described him as running the firm, and he's the guy who's in the office running everything. Were either of you guys taking on that trial attorney role when you first started, or you just knew, hey, this is one of the first hires that we need to make because
that was why
neither of us want to do this?
Neither of us want to do this.
Yeah.
Paul probably more so than me, right? Like, he doesn't mind it as much as I do. Like, I just don't like it. Like, it's not for me. And it's not that I don't think that I am good at it or could be a lot better at it. Like, Robert's always said, he's like, I could make you into a damn good trial attorney. And I'm like, no, thanks. And now it's funny because 8 years in, he's like, you're 100% made the right decision.
Yeah.
He's like, this is what you do.
Yeah.
Go do it. Keep doing it. Let me do what I do, and let the trial attorneys do what they do.
Yeah.
And Paul, I think, was kind of more on the edge, but I think that Paul's strength is being able to deal with people, being able to control chaos, and he's really good at negotiating. So he negotiates every single pre-litigation case himself.
Oh, cool.
So he does every single pre-litigation negotiation. He's dealing with all the closeout of all the cases, making sure that there's no tails on a case, making sure that everything's done the right way, making sure that all the liens, and that is so important.
So he's running your pre-lit department, essentially. And then the lawyers that you're hiring are doing all litigation stuff.
Correct.
So the 40 to 50 cases that you're giving to Ed or Michaela or something like that, they're all litigation? Like, they're already been filed?
Yeah, some pre-lit. Big premise cases have to be worked a certain way.
Right.
I hand those off to a litigation attorney
Gotcha.
straight from the go.
Why premises cases in particular?
You need an expert on it right away. You need to make sure that things are done properly. Usually commercial carriers are going to fight you in a different way. You just need to set up those cases strategically. Pre-litigation car accident rear end case can run through pre-lit. No problem.
Right.
If it gets big enough, or if it becomes problematic where they're not going to offer enough money, roll it up to lit.
Gotcha.
But we run all of those cases pre-litigation. Paul, a guy named Anthony that's been with us for 7 years, who is absolutely amazing. Those two kind of run the pre-litigation department.
Oh, cool.
We have an office manager. She's doing all the HR stuff. She's doing all the trust accounting. She's doing all the bookkeeping. She's doing all that stuff. She's great. And then you have litigation, and they are strictly litigation. That's what they're doing. Now, these premise cases, some of them they'll settle, the pre-lit premise cases, some of them they'll settle. Most of them end up going to lit anyway. So they're just handling them from early on. The client relationships there, they're making sure that's going on. So that's what those 40 to 50 cases are. Probably 80% filed in litigation, 20% of them are those premise pre-litigation cases that have a lot of value that they're working.
That's cool. One of the things that I've noticed is, and Michaela will probably tell you this as well, but there are certain insurance companies who are just like, we're not settling pre-lit, right?
For sure.
Because we would rather show you that we're willing to go to trial.
For sure.
And make you go spend 25 grand out of your own pocket to try a $15,000 case than just settle for policy limits. So my question to you is, how do you decide when a case that's pre-lit, you're getting undervalued?
Yeah.
How do you decide when to actually file on that case where you're going to be now doing discovery and you're in litigation, spending money, working it up, your bandwidth is expanding, or narrowing, I guess. But how do you decide when to file that case versus when to just like ditch it or send it out?
Or kill it?
Yeah, like who's making that decision and how do you decide when?
Paul, for the most part. He's crunching the numbers on it. He's looking at the business valuation of it, not on our business valuation, but the client's business valuation. How much money are you going to spend? What are you going to yield in a case if you go to litigation? Are you going to spend all your money on costs? A lot of law firms, they'll just file on it. They take their 40%, costs eat up the rest. Here's your quarter. Thanks for wasting your 2 years of your life.
Yeah, crazy.
That's a good way to burn someone. Right. Like, it's really silly. So he'll bring in the client and he'll sit them down. Here's what you're looking at. We think that they're undervaluing. This is probably what we're going to spend on litigation. Here's reasonably a range that we could hit. What do you want to do? Leave it up to the client.
Right.
Always leave it up to the client. Then, no matter what the outcome is, they've had a full evaluation of it. They make the choice. Some clients are like, kill it. I don't want to go.
Right.
Cool. I'll waive my fees. I waive my fees all the time. If I have a horrific motorcycle accident and there's $15,000 policy, I'm not taking shit on that.
Right.
I'll waive my fees. $25,000. I'll waive my fees. I waived my fees on a $250,000 policy for a guy that had all of his nerves in his left arm severed and he couldn't use his left arm anymore. It was $88,000 in attorney's fees. I gave every single dollar back to the kid. Yeah. Why? Because he's 30 years old. He had a 6-month-old son. He's a new parent. He doesn't know how he's going to work. That's a down payment for his house. I'll make that money back later on in life. Like, that is the model that I want to run, where it is putting people in front of money. And yes, I make less money as a result of it. I'm fine. I'm living a great life. I will continue to live a great, blessed life. But doing those things is the right thing to do, and energy is real and it comes back around. And I did that 16 months in when we weren't making money with Paul. And Paul's like, you're waiving fees on 200. We're going to finally make money. And I'm like, I can't look at myself in the mirror. And Paul's like, you're right. So we gave him, sure enough, we start getting in huge cases, like the biggest cases of my career. And that's energy. It's just the way that it works. And so I don't like to make those decisions. I like my clients to make those decisions. I think that's the right way. But I will go to litigation and lose money out of fucking principle if a client wants to.
Right.
Like, if you're going to try to pimp with me and go, here's a bullshit offer, and the client's down, fuck you. Yeah. I'll go in and lose money just to go fuck you up.
Yeah.
Because I know there's going to be a next time, and I don't want you to think you can get away with it.
Yeah.
And so many of these carriers, like, that's the game that they play. And so, cool. Let's go open up your policy.
And especially when you have people in your litigation department that have come from there, right? You have the ability to tell them, hey, look, I know the game you're playing. I've played that game
100%.
before, right? And I'm going to go show you why you shouldn't be playing this game.
I just go sit with Michaela and I'm like, look at this. Am I crazy?
Yeah.
And she'll tell me, you're crazy?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Or she'll be like, no, like, this is righteous. Let's go.
Yeah.
And Michaela's a great buffer for me because she looks at it from that side still. So does Ed. So that's been a huge advantage. But these guys in my lit department, they love it. Like, I gave Taylor a case the other day. It was a guy that's in a wheelchair that got hit by a car, thrown in the middle of the road, fractured his femur and his hip. And he is a Vietnam vet, really nice guy. And it was an attorney that hit him, right? Wouldn't give a statement at the scene, wouldn't talk to the cops, witness, liability's fine. They made like a $200,000 offer, and this guy's had multiple surgeries. And they come back and they're like, well, we got a huge policy. So, this is where we're starting. I just give it to Taylor. And Taylor's like, sends him an email. What are your limits? Like, we're not going to disclose our limits. Like, okay, cool. Well, put your insured on notice. We're filing and serving. Like, you just made a big mistake.
Right.
Like, your policy's now open. I don't care what it is. You've had a chance to tender it.
Yeah.
And now they're going to have to deal with it. And Taylor's the type that, now that he's in that position, he'll go try that case.
Yeah.
Unless they offer more than policy limits out of pure principle, he'll go try that case.
Right.
And I think that once insurance companies start to be aware of that, you have way less of a fight. And we have not, my attorneys get frustrated that they get on the eve of trial and then they settle because they're like pumped, ready to go. You know this, like you put your life on hold for 2 weeks prepping for a trial, and then they're like, here's the money we should have given you the whole time.
Yeah, I'm laughing because this is what just happened to us. Not life on hold for 2 weeks. I'm talking life on hold for like 3 months in prep for this trial. This trial was the only case that I had been working on for like 3 full months.
Yeah.
And at trial call, they finally offered us an amount of money that my client couldn't turn down. I still wanted to go, right?
For sure.
I had to give my client the advice of like,
this is your choice.
Good, right? And like we're $250,000 in on case costs at this point. Like there's a lot of risk here, but like I want to go. My opening statement is ready. I've got my PowerPoint. Like let me go. And ultimately she decided to take it, but that's what happens, right? It's like when you want to be in court and trying cases, and then they offer you this amount of money, but most people can't float that amount of case costs, for the 2 years leading to trial. Most law firms don't want to do the prep work that's involved. I think we responded to about 30 motions in limine on this case, like just over a weekend. Like it's insane.
Well, I don't think most people watching this, especially young attorneys, understand what you just said, which is to go to trial and to really do it the right way, you're spending $150,000 to $400,000.
Yeah.
And, every case is different, but that's a range. That's legitimately what you're spending to go through trial.
Yeah.
And if you're doing, like let's say us, like if you have 200 cases in litigation, I have anywhere between $2 and $4 million floating out in the ether somewhere of my money that's just out there that like will come back around eventually. But you can't just run into what you or I do year one because you have to have that treasure chest. You have to have the money to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Or you're going to do yourself a disservice. You're going to get forced to settle cases that you shouldn't settle because you don't have the money to put up to try them the right way.
Right.
And that's, I think, something that a lot of people miss early on. And that's why having that 6-month buffer and making sure that you're ready before you turn on the faucet is the right thing. Because you can run a pre-litigation mill for cheap, but you're doing your clients a disservice.
I know.
To be able to truly try a case, you're going to spend a lot of money. And there will be times you get clipped. That's the reality.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to take a $250,000 hit to the side of the face and be able to get back up the next day. And that's not for everyone.
Right.
Like that's not something that's easy. And so, I think that people don't understand the risk that goes into it. And I think a lot of people that work for other firms and employees, they're like, well, hey, like you have the head of the firm that's doing this financially and I'm making this. I'm like, you don't understand the risk. Like you don't understand the sacrifice that goes into it. Like you can go and do your own thing and start your own firm, but please understand what's going to go into that and what you're going to put on the line for that.
Absolutely.
Because the liability falls on you and I. The risk falls on you and I. We get clipped, it falls on you and I. And that's just the reality of it. And that's a big burden to hold.
Absolutely. I mentioned $250,000 in case costs, and I love the humble brag. You're like, is that a lot? Because like I'm out $4 million a month.
No, it's a lot. My point is, it is a lot. Like that's a lot, and that's one of your cases. I'm sure you have others that are in litigation that you're spending money on.
It's crazy because the litigation aspect of this too is like, I think we probably file on about 85% of our cases because of what you're describing as this pre-lit thing. It's just, you don't get the value out of it, right? And until you just establish, hey, we're filing, we're willing to go, you're going to have to keep doing it. Dan, I want to be cognizant of our time and just turn to a couple little fun things that we do at the end of our show here. I think a lot of our audience members are probably prepping for the bar exam right now, right? It's June. You're going to have to be taking the bar, I think, at the end of this month. Any like books that you enjoy reading, shows, TV shows, movies, anything like that you can recommend to our audience members law related or not, maybe just
They won't be
take a
law
little,
related.
take a little break
They
from the monotony of bar exam studying.
So I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't watch a lot of movies. I'm a big reader, but I'm like a hidden history, like the shit that they don't teach you in school, the way the world really works type of
Oh,
person.
cool.
I love digging into that. 2 recommendations: Creature from Jekyll Island, which is like how the Federal Reserve was formed and how the Federal Reserve really works, because people don't understand the story behind that and how big banks basically took control of the country through the Federal Reserve. It's a great book. So a book everyone should read in their lifetime. And then another one of those is Family of Secrets. It's about the Bush family, about Bush Sr., his role in the CIA, all of the nuances of how that family came to power. And it is really, really eye-opening.
Cool.
I love that kind of shit. Like I love...
Those are good answers. I thought you were going to say like a marketing or business book or something like that.
No.
I love when I'm surprised with the answers to this. It's always something that I'm not expecting.
I'm like the conspiracy theorist, like, oh, they're lying to us about everything.
You
and I
did
want to dig
mention like
into it.
alien abduction early on the podcast. I was like, ooh, do we have an alien talk coming here?
No.
'Cause
I'm not a big alien guy. Like I don't. It's weird, like how the government's coming out with like, oh yeah, there are flying saucers
Yeah.
and there are like, UFOs now. Like that shit's weird to me, but I don't dig too much into that. I like just like the hidden history of like how people have come to power and how they've retained power and how there are people, puppet mastering behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
Like that kind of stuff's fascinating.
For
to me.
sure.
So.
Yeah. What are you excited about? What's coming up next in your life that you're pumped to see?
We got Idaho up and running. We're going to get another office on the firm side. I couldn't be happier with where things are going. Going to hire a new attorney. Meeting with him today at lunch. I'm hoping it's a great fit. I think it will be. So we got that stuff going on. For me, like I've been on this grind for 14 and a half years now, and I've kind of put my life on hold, my personal life. Like you talk about how you got an 8-month-old. I didn't think I wanted kids. I didn't think I wanted to get married. I thought I'll just work. I love what I do. And I started to have like just dreams, visions, like realizations in the last few years, like that I'm going to wake up very regretful one day if I don't have a family, if I'm not a dad. And so I'm trying to put focus into that, into creating that ability in my life where I'm not working all the time, where I'm going to be able to settle down, going to be able to be a dad, going to be able to be present. I didn't have the most present father. I want to be that dad. And so that's kind of my focus over the next 15 years is keeping the firm running. I love what I do, but I want to be able to focus a little bit more on my personal life.
I would say it seems like your visions and your dreams, they play an important part in your life. So
For sure.
If you're having some dreams or visions about
For
it,
sure.
I would say steer into that skid.
For sure.
I being a parent is something that I knew I wanted my whole life, but just going through it now, and my daughter's she's actually going to turn 9 months on Sunday. My wife's pregnant with our second.
Congratulations.
So it's going to be
That's
a crazy
amazing.
couple of years
That's
that
awesome.
we've got coming up. But yeah, man, it's super cool. And I also think that I think they're sort of related in a weird way, like business and family.
Yeah.
And one of the things that my paralegal always talks to my clients about when they ask about me is like how I am as a husband and a father. And I think that it's one of the things that attracts people to you is just when
For
you're
sure.
genuine and when you're yourself. We talk about Robert.
For sure.
I talk to you about insurance brokers who talk about you and Paul and everything. And so that's really cool, man. I'm excited for you.
Me too.
Dan, where can people find you? What's the best way to get in contact with you if someone wants to give you a call after seeing the show or if they want to send you a case?
Yeah, you reach out anytime. Dan Fulkerson on Instagram, the Bulldog Attorney on Instagram, Batta Fulkerson on Facebook, battafulkerson.com, big building on Washington. Stop by the office. You're always welcome. I'm always here to help, especially with younger lawyers, law students that are coming up. I know how insecure it is. I know how insecure I was. I didn't know if I was going to find what I wanted to do. You're welcome to reach out to me anytime. I am happy to be a resource, to give advice or direction, whatever I can do. So feel free, reach out anytime. That's why I so appreciate you doing this, because I think that it's very needed. When we were walking in here, I told you, like, I at some point in time want to teach a course on the business of law. Like, that is I don't want to get paid. I just want to do it. I want to be able to get that out into the world, because I don't think it's taught enough. And so anything I can do to be a resource, I'm here. Reach out
I
anytime.
think that you've done a great job today talking to us about the business of law. I've tried to make that as part of this podcast as possible. I would say that if you ever end up teaching a class on the business of
Yeah.
law, let me know, because I'm going to attend it.
No.
I think that you are an expert in the subject. I think a lot of our viewers here today are going to be getting a lot of insight
Thank
from
you.
you. So thanks for being here.
Of course.
I'm going to
Thank you for having
sign
me.
off. Hopefully I won't blow it, because we're live at this point. But I'm Michael Goldfaden, co-founder of the newly formed law firm of Goldfaden Benson, personal injury firm here in San Diego, California. You've been watching the Bar Bites podcast with our special guest here today, Dan Fulkerson, and his dog, Teddy. Dan, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.